Hey everybody, welcome back to the Love Seat. It's been a little
It's
minute.
been a couple weeks.
It's been a little
It's been a couple
minute.
weeks,
Yeah.
yeah.
Still in COVID. Actually, in I guess round two, we're starting to realize that the bars needed to be shut down. It is July 2nd today, so 2020
You know
July
how
2.
we can tell? You know how we can tell? Because Dana's growing out her hair.
See, look at that. That's some length. She got the curls kicking.
Okay, so if you have watched any of the videos from like the start, you'd be like, what's going on there? Well, yeah, this is me going.
It
I'm
looks
gonna do
amazing.
this.
I love it. Yeah.
This is my favorite part. I don't know what that is, but or the little. All right, go. I distract. Go ahead.
So I'm Steffi Starr, and I operate. I facilitate spirit plant ceremonies. That's what I do. I help people reach their subconscious mind, their highest self, through some molecules that are available to us in nature, and I do that with love and passion more and more every day. So that's what I do. But today, Dana.
Did we just meet?
Yeah, Dana is going to start with our topic, and it's actually like a viewer request. A mutual friend with whom we had a really lovely chat last weekend asked us to kind of hit on some more specific topics. So Dana's going to get into that today, and I'll let her tell you about herself, and then we'll chat.
All right. You know what I think is interesting? That every time Steffi comes in the morning, we're like, okay, we're going to film today. And she comes in, and I'm like, you got anything you want to talk about? And she'll either be like, yeah, I do, or no, I don't. And I'm like, yeah, I do, or no, I don't. But we never really tell the other one what it is.
Right.
We're just like, oh, I want to talk about COVID today, or I want to talk about my children being home for 16 weeks today, or whatever it is we want to talk about. But we never really get into it until we're sitting here.
Right.
So she walks in and she's like, so-and-so says that, she would like us to talk about blah, blah today. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I was thinking. So it's just funny how that happens.
It's always in sync.
Yeah. So with that said, I was walking this morning and I was thinking about what I would talk about today. And what kept popping into my head was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it didn't matter what the situation was. It didn't matter what happened. It didn't matter who or what did it to me. I would come home and I would relay a story, and
I know what
this
you're
is
say.
Always how it would unfold.
I know exactly
I'd be
what you're
like,
say.
I'd be like, Mom, Dad, I was at school today, and my teacher punched me in the face, and then made me take all my clothes off, and circled all my fat spots, and then set me on fire and threw me in the street. And it would always be like, well, what did you do?
My mother would look at me and go, well, what did you do?
Yeah.
What did you do?
And I'm like, I'm on fire. What did you do? But the truck came. What did you do? And I
Holy
obviously
moly.
hated them and resented them my entire life for this. But when I look back, I realize what a gift that was. Because even though it was a little extreme in my house, like I could be bleeding out the eyes, and my mother would be like, go to school, you'll feel better. I'm like, but my eyes, I can't see it bleed, and grab the eyes. Go to school, you'll feel better. But the amount of personal accountability that I learned, self-discipline that I learned because of this, has served me so well in my life. And I have watched, because I just turned 49 last week. So in the last 30 years, I have watched society shift in a way that takes the personal accountability away and shift it to others, whether it be with ridiculous lawsuits or whether it be with an overactive customer service, or I'll just give the people what they want, give the people what they want. And I've watched it in child rearing. Remember, I was in education. I was a teacher from like 1995, 94, 95 to 2019. And I was in one school from like 2001 to 2017. And just in that school, 'cause you're dealing with the same type of kids, the same demographic, I watched the level of responsibility with the children and the parents shift in a way over that 15, 16 years to, it's a teacher's fault or it's the administration's fault. And it was a private school, and there was a lot of, do whatever you can do to make the kids and the parents happy. The kids are going to pass no matter what sort of mentality, and took the onus off of the child. And I think in that environment for a long time, what made me a standout with the kids and then the parents, and I guess my peers, was I didn't stand for any of that. I always put the onus on the children. in the end, I think that's what eventually kind of pushed me out of education, because they just didn't want that. But I still get emails on the regular from kids thanking me because they're responsible adults. And once again, I'm digressing. The point is, what I learned in my life is that in any situation, the onus is really on me. And in a video in the past, I was talking about my husband, and I was St. Rob, and I was talking about how somebody gave me some wisdom a few years back when I was like, oh my God, how do I not kill him? How do I not bury him in the backyard? And she was like, first, you have to control yourself. You have to not kill him. You have to be able to stay calm and peaceful in situations where you want to kill him. And then when you get there, you have to get to a place where you don't even want to kill him. And I always found that to be so profound, because yeah, there's one thing to control your anger, and then there's another thing to not be angry at all, right? But how do you do that? And I did that by constantly looking at myself. Well, when he does that, why is it I want to kill him? Because if the guy next to him did that, I may not want to kill him. So what's going on there? And the common denominator is always me, right? So we were talking to this friend of ours that suggested that we expand upon this concept. Is she was in a situation, and the details, they never matter, but she was in a situation where she was like, all right, I get it, personal accountability, it's how we respond to a situation, and it's what we create in our lives, and all blah, blah. But what her question was, I was in this situation when this happened. I had no control over that. This was not my doing. This was somebody else's choice. This was something that somebody else did that put me in a situation where I was uncomfortable and I was unhappy and I felt like I couldn't trust and I felt betrayed. How am I responsible for that? You're not. You're responsible for how you respond to that. Because if I was in that same exact situation, I would have looked at it and probably responded differently, because I am not carrying the trigger points that you're carrying. Not that I don't carry my own, don't misunderstand me.
Right.
But she, in that situation, responded or reacted in the way that she did because she was carrying traumas from childhood, traumas that made her feel either unheard or where she couldn't trust, unworthy, unseen, all of those things. So when these things were in her face, when these experiences happened, those feelings were triggered. So where is the personal responsibility? The personal responsibility is when you have those feelings, to then look at yourself and really be honest with yourself about why you're having those feelings, and then address them. And that's where the work is, and that's where the difficulty is. And I've often talked about or alluded to my kind of, I don't know, irritation with people who are constantly looking outwardly, like, and this is no disrespect, but if I, buy these crystals, and if I go out the full moon and write my wish list, and if I do a drum circle, not that there's anything wrong with those things, but if I do those things, then all my problems will be solved. But if you're not looking, if you're not doing the work, those things are lovely in addition to the work.
To the inner
But
work.
if you're not doing the work, those things are meaningless. That's my phone. We're going to ignore it. Okay. We're just going to keep talking and pretend like that's not happening, even though I'm terribly distracted and I'm drawing attention to it. Anyway, so I have a frustration.
Do you want me to talk?
No.
I'm not distracted.
No, so I have a frustration level with that. I just want to share one more little thing that happened the other day, and then we'll move on. So again, it's really about doing the inner work. Why am I triggered? Why is it that when my husband, all he wants to do is make life better for me? All he wants to do is, with everything I do, just kind of add his 2 cents to help make it better for me because he loves me so much. Why am I so annoyed with the fact that he's a micromanager and that he doesn't think that I could do things correctly? Because I learned in my life that I wasn't good enough and everything I did was wrong. So it's my own personal trigger. So that's where my personal accountability responsibility is. I have a friend who has a young son, a grown young son in his 20s, that had a few years ago a very, very tragic, traumatic thing happen in his life. I don't want to get into too many details. We're going to call him Gary. We're going to call her Sally. Okay? Actually, we'll call him Harry and Sally. It's easier for me to remember the names, right? So Harry, in his early 20s, was in a situation when he was out. He was partying with some friends. And he was hanging with people that he trusted. Some of the people that he was hanging out with were of high stature that worked for governmental services. So people that you trust, right? And he somehow, I don't know if he was drugged or if he drank too much, found himself kind of kidnapped and held captive. This is a true story. This is a friend of mine's son. Captive in this man's apartment for like the entire weekend and was sexually assaulted over and over, right? Young, beautiful kid, had everything going for him. Maybe had a little anxiety before that. Who doesn't in this day and age? And this happened. And since then, for the upcoming years, this is probably like 3-4 years ago, so the couple years to follow, he was a mess. He couldn't go anywhere. He couldn't do anything. He would be good for a couple of days, and then he would fall apart. His mother, God bless her, didn't even know what to do with him. Took him everywhere, but took him to like a psychologist. Took him to a regular doctor. Had like certain techniques, like things that like like fringe stuff that like a lot of people don't do. Give him pills, give him all these things to help him be better. And I would ask her, "What's he doing to address this thing?" She's like, "Well, he says that that's not the problem." "Oh, that's just something that happened to me. This has nothing to do with that." And he just kept refusing to look at it and refusing to look at it. And I'm telling you, she threw money at everything. She tried everything. He would show up at her house in his 20s, wind up sleeping in her bed because he needed to feel safe. This went on for the longest time. So I haven't heard anything about any of this because it's been quiet. So clearly, I think he's improving. Things are going well for him. But I see enough on social media, and I speak to her enough. I don't know, what's his name?
Harry.
Gary.
Sorry, that was
not
Gary.
the name that really is. How is it anonymous? And he's doing better. He's got a girlfriend, or he's doing this, or he's doing that. Okay. So I saw her recently, and I was like, "How's Harry?" Sally, I saw, and I was like, "How's Harry?" And she was like, "Oh my God, he's doing great. He's doing this and that and the other, and he's starting to write this book, and he's like all of these like amazing things." And I'm like, "Well, what changed?" And she said, "Well, he finally said, that thing that happened to me was clearly causing me discomfort. So as difficult as it was, he looked at it. He processed it, understood why and how it affected him the way he did, and he began to do the work and work through it. And now, look what's happening." And I looked at her, and nobody wants to hear "and I told you so," but I was like, "Duh!" Like I was like, "Duh!" But he had to do it in his time because it's easy for me to say it's right there. Right. It's right there because I didn't have that experience. I mean, think about what this kid went through, right? But we all have our things that we're like, no, it's got to be this. Right. No, I'm buying this crystal. It's this will help. No, because it's so scary. Because we all have our stuff that it's so scary to look at. But in my experience, when you look at it, it's never, 0 times, never as scary as you thought it was when you ignored it, right? True. And it gets bigger and badder and scarier and uglier, right? And this kid, Harry, if you're watching, I'm so happy and I'm so proud of you. And your story is beautiful, and you're going to be the strength and empowerment for another person who's fearful of looking at their scary thing. So that, just to kind of bring it home, that is the personal accountability. That is the responsibility to self. I'm seeing, obviously the world is crumbling around us. Everybody sees that. And I'm seeing how people are reacting to it. And I'm seeing people that are reacting the most vehemently, doesn't matter what side, are often in the most pain. Yeah. And they're fighting for whatever their pain is. I went into special education when I got out of college to teach students with emotional handicaps and behavioral disorders. My teacher certificate says special ed behavioral disorders because I was in pain and I wanted to be the person that I needed. And I saw it in my entire educational career, just being the person that I needed. So when people are reacting or responding to what's going on, you know, if they're vehement about it, I think it's in their best interest to sort of look at why?
Yeah.
Why? Because you may not be triggered by a virus. You're triggered by the governmental control and the masks and this and that, but what is it about you that has an issue with being controlled? Why do you feel powerless to that? So again, that's all it is. It's just looking, where am I coming from here? Why am I coming from this place? What's going on here? Always, I used to tell the kids when I used to teach all the time, you know, they keep going, one kid once said, I didn't have my homework because my cleaning lady threw it out. Why should it even have been in your cleaning lady's hand? And why do you even think that's... So every finger you point out...
There's three coming back.
Yeah. So... Anyway, this is turning into a ramble, but you understand my point. I'm going to pass it on to Stephi.
I hear what you say, and I agree wholeheartedly. And my mother had the same exact question every time I walked in the door or a teacher called, which wasn't common for me. But I had a brother who had a hyperactivity disorder in conjunction with a learning disability as a child. And there were a lot of behavioral issues. And even with that diagnosis, my mother would look at him and say, what did you do? The conversation always started with, what did you do? That's how I knew exactly where you were going, because that is like written across the hard drive of my head. Whenever there's an issue, the first question is, what did you do? And knowing somehow intuitively that we were going to wind up talking about this, I was going about my morning routine this morning, and I was so struck by this idea that if we allow other people, if we allow governments and institutions, if we allow circumstances and scenarios to determine our happiness, our sense of worth, the amount of personal power we display and use in our interactions every day, we are fucked. I'm just going to be crystal clear about it. If we allow anything other than our own intention, our own will, our own empowerment to determine how we're seen, how we live, how we feel, we're fucked. Especially in light of what Dana said, this is a very different time. I have no desire to label how it used to be good and how it is now bad, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. We simply live in the society we live in. Personal accountability is not the go-to anymore like it once was. And there may be benefit in that, because there certainly was a whole lot of blame the kid, almost to the point where I literally was physically abused in a classroom one day as a child. I think I was in second grade, third grade, in and around there, a room full of 6 and 7 year olds. And a teacher picked up a desk and threw it on a child. He chased us around a room. He actually locked the door, let all the class leave, and kept me in the room at the end of the day, and locked the door and chased me around a room. And I had to go home and tell my mother, this is what happened. The school called. I went home and had to explain myself. And on that day, my mother did not ask me, what did you do? Because this was a very disturbed person. Actually, he had his teaching credentials removed. He was never allowed to teach in the state of Pennsylvania again. So, yeah, there's lunatics out there. So we have to, walk that fine line.
We have to listen to our children.
There has to be a balance. But for a long time, the balance laid very heavily on the kid. What did you do? And monsters got away with all kinds of stuff. I mean, look at Larry Nassar in the U.S. gymnastics. I just watched a documentary on Netflix called Athlete A. What these girls put up with because you're just a complainer. You're just, you just don't want to work hard. You're just too lazy. Yeah. So we have to be very careful, which is why I don't judge where we're at right now as worse or better. It's just where we're at. But because of where we're at, the level of personal accountability that is talked about and considered in our interactions every day has shrunk dramatically. So you really cannot afford to allow the world at large to impose upon you or determine for you how you feel, how you live, and when you choose to keep your boundaries and when you choose to acquiesce through them in an effort for a greater good. So having said that, what I'd like to point out is my job every day is to wake up and be certain that I remember every person, every scenario, everything I encounter is a mirror. This is part of my path. This is part of my walk. This is part of how I sense my whatness in the world.
Explain what that is. the mirror part.
Yeah, so I believe that there is a singular energy, and you can call it God, you can call it the oneness, you can call it the universe. It's not about the words. It is about this idea that there is a creative energy that from whence everything has emanated, and that it is everything it has created, and everything it has created is
So
it.
what you're
I believe
saying
that.
is God is within us.
I am the thing that put me here. I am
Just to
in
be clear.
form and construct. Yeah, people like to challenge me with, oh, so you think you're God. I would never deign to say I think I'm God, but I do understand there's a singular energy. All is it. It is all. I am that, and if I am that, you are that. So I start there. If I encounter something that I perceive as adverse, conflicting, as an other, I've learned to like an other. That thing does not exist. There are no others. There's only me ever experiencing me through this world of form and construct, source experiencing itself as what it is not. It starts as spirit, it turns into form, only to go back to spirit again. I am in that middle part. Stephanie is in that duality. So if and when I am confronted or challenged, or I face something that does not align or sit well, my first job is to not judge it. The minute I judge it, I surrender my peace around it. So in not judging and just seeing the event, the person, the scenario, the thing as neutral, I can then assess my response to that thing. What is this person? What is this scenario? What is this thing trying to show me about me? And I can tell you, it's not an easy way to live. It does require strict and total awareness of self. But I can tell you it is more comfortable, and at the end of the day, it is more freeing than any other way I have ever walked this planet. I have walked this planet as a victim. I have walked this planet as a survivor. I have walked this planet as the other. I lived with women for 16 years. I was in loving, connected, romantic relationships with women during a 16-year period based on the childhood I had, based on my experiences with men. And I understand what it is to live on the margins of society. I understand what it's like to be different. I was 350 pounds at one point. Like children pointed at me. You know, like I was that person in a store. I understand being the other, but at the end of the day, my gut, my knowing what I am reminds me there is a singular energy. It is all is it. If I don't like what I see, it's trying to teach me something. And I have the option in that moment to decide to learn, or I have an option in that moment to point the finger and blame you. So blaming you doesn't work, because at the end of the day, I don't live with you. I live with me. I have to put this head on a pillow in a dark room at the end of every day. Knowing that I am only ever experiencing the opportunity to improve what I am, to more become what I am, it has taught me a very profound lesson, and that is we do not win or lose. We win or learn. There are not friends and enemies. There's friends and there's teachers. And when we can see one another that way, it levels out the playing field. It makes the respective dichotomous corners unnecessary. Just to your point, I thought about this morning. This was all going on in my brain as I contemplated coming here. People who feel compelled to climb on one wagon or the other to the point where the other wagon becomes an enemy, the other wagon needs to be expunged or exterminated, and we've lived through that in history. I'm not being dramatic, and there are days you wake up and you think we may be heading towards that again in society. But what I have found is speaks to Dana's point so specifically. People who feel compelled to climb into a corner that is so far to the right or left and then make an enemy of those on the other side are really responding to pain,
Their own pain.
within themselves. Because I can tell you, I have been a lesbian. I don't claim a religion. I grew up white in a inner city, very diverse upbringing. I grew up with all kinds of people from all nationalities. I grew up in Philadelphia. It's a melting pot, literally, from all over the world. Most of my neighbors spoke broken English, and I was aided by that. I was built up by that. I saw what other cultures are. I was very greatly affected by that. I went to school, I went to a private school that was 60% predominantly black kids. I was a poor kid in that school. I was actually like one of the minority in that school. These kids were wealthy. They came from the best homes in the city of Philadelphia. I was there on scholarship. I was there because I was just lucky. So I have a very diverse background that I bring to this. I don't declare any particular party, but I know when I go out and I don't wear a mask because of my healthcare background, because I understand disease and epidemiology to the extent that I can. I was 30 years in Western medicine, worked in an ER for 25. I don't wear a mask. It's not because I like one candidate or another. It's not because I think that you wear your mask and there's something wrong with you. So having said all that, there is absolutely something to look at when people feel compelled to dig so deeply their heels in that they stop seeing the humanity on the other side. I have my opinions, I have my practices, but I also understand that you're entitled to yours. And that allows any of us who are in this position to share our love and light, to realize we don't have to fall into the fray. We don't have to dive into the dichotomy, that there is a beautiful middle ground where we all can live and breathe and experience one another. So
I have to say that there is a lovely young gentleman here looking around, and I think that we've said what we need to say. And
See.
I am not a fan of the edit. I like the authenticity of the spew.
Yes.
And
and the phone. So we'll see you next time on the Love Seat. We always appreciate you. Thanks for being here. We love you, and we'll catch you next time.